Hey out there, excuse me. This is the 4th of July, 2019, and it's just about 10:17 or so in the morning here in Northern California. And today, as usual, I'll get into a lot of different stuff. And so many people, the 4th of July is just a time to shoot off fireworks. And a lot of people don't even know what it's about, this Independence Day. And it's kind of ironic that at this point in American history, they say that patriotism is higher than previous years, they're finding. And, independence has a lot to do with freedom, if I'm not mistaken. Freedom and independence is kind of one and the same. Independent, you're free. But, we've lost a lot of freedom in America. And it's imperative that people understand how they've lost it. I talk about tyranny. It's imperative that people understand how they're being tyrannized because you really can't confront a problem unless you identify the problem. It's kind of like taking your car, it's making a funny sound, it's behaving strangely, differently than normal, let's say, and you bring it to the shop. And the shop will tell you, well, we don't know what's wrong with it either. We've got to diagnose it. We've got to figure out what's wrong with it before we could talk about fixing it and giving you an estimate for the repairs. So that often is the biggest task involved because the repair, the fix, might be really simple and cheap and you might be able to do it yourself. But until you identify the problem, then you've got a problem. So it's imperative that people understand how they're being tyrannized and how they're losing their freedom, how they're losing their independence. And we've been doing so for a long time. Well, it's happened under the guise of capitalism. And for a guy that's been paying attention, I find it unnerving that we've gotten this far down the line and people are still in a slumber. And it's shocking to me to consider what exactly it might take to wake people up. And so that's why I'm always saying that we're in a lot of trouble. Because I firmly believe that we are in a lot of trouble. And the big problem is that the undiagnosed situation in America has been going on for so long that people have gotten used to it, just like the analogy of the frogs in the pot of water. Okay, we're cooked. People are mesmerized by their smartphones. People have investments in 401ks, and they think that someday, even though they're the enslaved class, that they feel someday they're going to be ahead, they're going to be on top. So they become participants, they become part of the establishment, and they are trusting in it. They are putting their faith in it and counting on it, hoping and praying that it succeeds. They want this current trend to succeed, but you see, the problem is that we have had anything but capitalism. In at least the almost 56 years now since JFK was assassinated, okay, we haven't had a semblance of true capitalism because JFK was showing America what true capitalism involved. And it involved a competing currency. And he was supplanting the Federal Reserve notes with United States Treasury notes, also called silver notes or silver certificates. And the American people were taking to these new dollars, because dollars is a loose term, it's just a generic term for money. Basically, it's the bills, right? The dollar bills. And that could be U.S. Treasury dollar bills or Federal Reserve dollar bills or any other dollar bills. If Bitcoin came up with a dollar bill, then they could circulate that, right? But you see, that's when we'd have a problem. That's why Bitcoin is, to me, it's so impotent, except for it's like any other maybe stocks or bonds. I call it dead money. I know Max Kaiser of the Kaiser Report and Stacy Herbert are at the some kind of Bitcoin convention in San Francisco right now and talking it up. And I haven't checked the Bitcoin figures, but apparently it's soaring. And Max says, well, it's not private investors that are getting into it. It's more the big boys now. There's trillions of dollars floating around, and Max expects it to go to maybe $100,000 a coin or a million. And I'm not invested at all in Bitcoin. Okay, I don't have a scintilla and a red cent in invested in Bitcoin. But I don't begrudge people that do. I mean, I totally get it. I totally understand people wanting to get ahead, people wanting to be prudent and wise about their financial future. I get all that. So I don't hold it against anyone, but I don't see it as a truly viable alternative to fiat currency. People want fiat currency. Okay, they want something that's quickly and easily exchanged, hard money. I mean, fiat money will still, in its acutely debased, deworthed, diluted form, is still hard currency. And you can buy anything on the face of the earth, any goods or services, with good old Federal Reserve notes, fiat currency, money. And so people want to be able to exchange whatever it is, their goods and services, for cold hard cash. It's just a matter of fact. And until Bitcoin reaches that stature, it is going to remain basically it's going to remain subjugated to fiat currency, and it's going to be marginal in terms of its use for the people. And what I mean about dead money is it's sitting there like an investment. And you could look even like, let's say you had a savings account, and we were still at an era when people were actually gaining interest and compounded interest on their money, right? Well, it's still dead money because you're afraid to take any money out of your savings because in your mind you're thinking, well, that's impractical, that's imprudent, and I have common sense, and I know that the best thing to do is to keep my money in my savings and accrue the interest, and then I get interest on top of the interest that's been paid, and that's compounded, right? So you say, don't touch it, leave it. And for all intents and purposes, it becomes dead money, like Bitcoin or like stocks and bonds. Okay, and it's not in circulation, so the velocity of the currency isn't there. The cash flow, basically. And what I really want to do with anybody listening to me is tie in the spiritual aspect to the monetary aspects of our reality, our paradigm, this reality that's been shoved down our throats, and just point out how stupid it is that we spend so much of our time, this by far and away the most intellectual creature on the face of the earth, and we are mired in this muck, okay, of investing so much of our energy, so much of our time on this stupid entity that we call money. Okay, it's just stupid. And any way that I could thwart the evildoers, I would do it. Okay, and you got to understand how this ties in with Scripture because of Jesus' teachings. He made it very clear. He didn't mince words. Money, if you really want to consider yourself seeing through the eyes of God, being on the same page, being like-minded, and wanting to please Him above all else, then you will see through His eyes. You will understand, okay, because He doesn't hide where He's coming from, what His character, nature, and personality is like at all. If He did that, we couldn't emulate Him, could we? So He has to do it in broad daylight, right out in the open. He has to spell it out for us. And He did that, okay? And money is, for all intents and purposes, a false competing God. It competes for our affections. It competes for our attention. Okay, money is indeed the love thereof, the root of not some of the evil. If it was the root of some of the evil, Jesus would have said so. No, somehow money is a root of every single evil in the world. Okay, and if you think sin is evil, then it ties into sin too, which has always made me curious because as much of a righteous guy as I am, I struggle with sin. I'll be honest with you. Okay, I mean, I'm a single man. I mean, I've been a bachelor for far too long. And it's not good for a man to be alone, as spelled out in the beginning, right there in the book of Genesis. God made a woman so that a man wasn't alone. So yes, Yes, I crave the opposite sex. Okay, I'm the male of the species and I crave the female of the species. And I struggle often in vain. And I admit that to God, and God already knows very well. I admit that to the whole world. Yes, I love to dote over the beauty of the female. And God knows I wish I had a woman. God knows I just one woman. I don't want, I mean, look, let me be blunt. Okay, if it were up to me, there wouldn't be a stitch of porn out there. Okay, I'm not doing it. Now I don't hold it against anybody, and I all the women that are want to be photographed nude. Okay, that's their prerogative. But the fact is that I can't do it. I wouldn't do it. There would not be a stitch of porn. Does that mean that, well, I don't imbibe in looking at the beauty of the female in all her glory? I mean, I've struggled in vain for a long, long time, and I don't like it. It's far from perfect. I like it and I don't. It's a love-hate thing. And I'm in that regard, God knows I'm weak. There's no sense in lying about it. It's just the truth. Okay. And I wonder, what kind of vices would disappear, dissipate, would fall away. Okay. You've got your vices. I've got mine. Okay. That's not the only vice I have. Okay. I struggle with tobacco. And I know it's not perfect. I wish I was clean. I wish I didn't smell like tobacco. Yeah, but I also love to smoke. So I try to do it in moderation so I don't get sick. I want to live. I don't want to die. I enjoy life. So it's far from ideal. And I wonder, there's just a couple of vices of mine. Uh, but you have your vices. A lot of people, it's food is a vice. I don't have that issue, not at all. I don't understand how people can just, eat and eat and eat and become obese and unhealthy. And, that's not my thing. Does that mean I'm better than anybody else? No, it doesn't. Furthermore, I don't want to be better than anybody else. I just want to be equal. Okay. But we've all got our issues. For some people, it's gambling. For some people, it's drugs. That's not my issue. I mean, I've had doctors because of some health issues I've had that I'm getting over, thank God, to put me on painkillers. And I say, no way, I'm not doing it. And so nutrition and avoiding certain junk foods has helped me to toxic foods, really. Junk foods is a euphemism for toxic food. I have I don't want to be on drugs. I know that painkillers, if you do your own research, it's going to mess up your liver. It's going to mess up your mind, your mood. It's affecting your mood. It's altering your mood. Do you understand? So I don't want to be on drugs, or a minimum. I mean, of anything. I've enjoyed mood and mind altering drugs in the past. I'm not saying that I'm Mr. Purity here when it comes to this stuff. But there are some that are far less objectionable, that are natural, let's say, herbal stuff, without going into details. But I'm not into, the kind of the party rave type stuff where people are doing drugs and they're doing cocaine or meth, they're sharing, and even smoking pot. I'm not really a social pot smoker either. I'm not. A little drink, maybe a beer, a glass of wine, maybe maybe I could have a mixed drink, something like that. I can understand it, but I understand that you've got to utilize self-control because I've had issues with that in the past. But never that's gotten me in a lot of trouble. But DUIs, I've never had one of those in my life. Although back in the 70s as a teenager, I can remember it was a lot different with